by Radhika Das. He's a really famous kirtanier. But yeah, thank you everyone for joining. And as we wait for more people to trickle in, we'll just start off with a quick icebreaker and then I'll hand it off to Kula, our speaker for today. So I thought it'd be fun to talk about self-care and anything that we do to take care of ourselves, whatever way it might be. So the icebreaker question is, what is your favorite self-care activity to do? It could be very simple, like getting ice cream or sleeping. So anybody want to start us off for today?
Uh, well, if you don't mind, I previously I'd wait, but yesterday I did do a bit of self-care. I went to the beach, not just to go to the beach, but since I've been here in California, I haven't gone in the water. So it's been 2 years and I haven't went into the ocean. So that was very rejuvenating, like a self-care activity. And then as a sample example you gave, I did get ice cream right after that. So it's actually very helpful. It was very good.
I can imagine. That seems like the perfect combo, like ice cream at the beach.
Yeah, it was perfect.
Yeah.
I was going to say, um, honestly, for me, like self-care activities, sometimes it's just like booking a trip, going somewhere and not doing anything there. It's it's like a forceful unplug from reality and life that you have back home, which is so hard to unplug from sometimes because you know you're there, so you got to do it. Or it's a lot easier to be involved. But if your time zone's different, if you're sleeping when everyone's awake and awake when everyone's sleeping, it's like it's a forceful reset. And I really enjoy doing that sometimes. Um, yeah.
Yes. Booking an impromptu trip. That sounds really fun, except that I'm always like too scared to do that. I'm like, can I do this? I'm such an overthinker about it, but that sounds really fun. Just going somewhere and not having anything to do. Yeah, Graham, do you want to go ahead?
I'd have to say, well, for weekends I do acupuncture, and then well, that's on Saturdays, and Sundays I do Tai Chi. And I actually do it twice. I do it face to face in the studio, and then I do it over Zoom on Sunday afternoons. Didn't do it this time because, well, I did the Tai Chi. We had an open house, and lots of people came by and actually joined up. So,
Mhm.
I mean, it was the social activity as well.
Yeah.
And, we had, well, one lady from Mexico um, joining up, and of course, we immediately clicked. And then actually, the studio where they rent the space, um, there's this one group, well, we're in there from until noon, and then there's this group that kicks us out. I mean, in a friendly way, but they're Indian, and I noticed, they've got these costumes, well, the dress, and I think it's the word kameez is in there, so I'm not sure. That comes from
Yeah, that is a word for sure
right.
that I know of in my language, but
Okay, so in Hindi, it's kameez.
yeah, it is. It is.
Okay, because that comes from Arabic, because kamisa comes from,
Oh,
yeah.
wait, that's really interesting. Did you also say you did like agriculture stuff in the beginning, Graham?
Oh, acupuncture.
Acupuncture. Okay, I was like agriculture. I don't remember you saying that. I don't know what that sounds
Organic
like.
gardening.
Yeah, that sounds really fun. I think
No,
for me, oh, sorry, go ahead.
no, I just said it was just it was an interesting Sunday.
Yeah,
I couldn't
sounds.
wait.
Yeah, I think for me, just getting ice cream is the best form of self-care. Or just like talking with friends. I think community just makes it more lively and yeah.
That too, and I have to try gulab jamun with ice cream.
Yeah, I'm telling you, you have to try that combination. People who have can vouch.
What's
Well, I'm just
what
trying to picture it right now.
what's a favorite flavor of yours, Manya? If it's a
Mm,
self-care in particular, a self-care flavor.
that's really funny. Um, probably the most sugar any flavor can have. I really like salted caramel or like cookie dough based ones.
Mm.
Um, yeah, I'm also a big fan of creme brulee in
Oh,
drinks.
oh yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
That's definitely my weakness.
Yeah.
I'm a big nut ice cream, pistachio
Yeah.
or almond. Those are
Have
usually
you
my
I
tried
was also just gonna say pistachio.
I don't know why.
yeah.
It's that you were asking? Have I
Oh yeah, I'm saying, have you tried Dubai chocolate? It has like a layer of
ah,
pistachio in it.
I have. I don't know if I've had the original. There's everything's coming out as Dubai chocolate, and they keep on saying they're the original. And I'm like, I don't
Yeah.
know. It all tastes good though.
Yeah, I got it as a gift and I was like, I'm gonna save this for a while. And I've already finished more than half the
You're
so
taking care of yourself. You're taking care of yourself.
yeah.
I'm
It's
waiting for Zoom to have the option to share samples of food across the
Oh,
virtual
I wish.
airways. It's
Digital
like
potluck.
instead of share screen, can it be share ice cream?
Oh,
Oh,
That would
a
be
good
so
one.
cool.
I could definitely live with that.
I know,
yeah, we're getting
right?
there.
Mhm.
We're moving.
yeah, oh my God. All right. Thank you everyone for sharing. So excited to have Kula here with us. Already in the room has brightened up with you in it. So
Yeah,
thank you so much
glad
for
to be.
being here.
Well, thank you.
Um, yeah, for those of you who don't know, Kula is a former monk as well. He's been practicing Bhakti Yoga for a while, and he is currently serving as a chaplain at Stanford. He has been trained in chaplaincy at University Hospital in Newark, which is really cool. Um, and he also has a background in psychology and religion, and a lot of his talks talk about spiritual care. And out of chaplaincy, he also likes nature, bookstores, which I just found really fun, and the quest for perfect pizza. So, all fun stuff. Thank you, Kula, and over to you. I don't know if you're just frozen on my end or
Sorry about that.
oh, you're back.
Yeah,
Okay.
I'm
Well, we
just
were
like,
just talking about your quest for finding the best pizza, and if that's
oh,
true.
yeah. I mean, not to, I know it seems like it's such an easy, and my wife really made, I think, the best pizza. I don't know. I didn't know she was going to do it, but it really was objectively. And I mean that because I would, I would say that if it was not, but for some reason, somehow she made the best pizza. It's not that I doubt her abilities either, but I've had a lot of pizza growing up, a lot, because I grew up in New Jersey and New York. So I don't know. It was yeah, it was my birthday and she made the best pizza I've ever had. And it hasn't happened again, but that's
Well,
probably this.
you've got to try it.
Yeah, I will. I don't know exactly what elements came together to form that pizza, but it was just about perfect.
So what's your
Awesome.
favorite
Yeah.
toppings?
Yeah, it was anyway, I could talk about it for a while, but I made a presentation. It's not about pizza. But yeah, we could talk about that also later. I am going to talk about, I think I'll talk for a little bit, but I was hoping maybe we'll see how time goes, and there's a bit of like maybe a little writing activity at some point, and maybe we could include pizza in there. I'll share my screen now. Let's see. This is up 3. Now, so do you guys see my presentation? It says Devanagari. That's not, I mean, and then, oops, let's see here. So this is, all right, there's the English. Is it in English and English letters now or still? Okay, okay. Um, so yeah, thank you guys. I'm happy to be here again, speak with you guys. You guys are always quite thoughtful, and I appreciate the discussions. Um, so this is the topic I had prepared for today. Today, how do I know this is my spiritual path? And why that kind of came about is because about 3 weeks ago, me and my wife were asked to join a youth retreat in our religious community, and we, you know, we gave different sessions. And one session I gave, which is included in what I'll speak about today, is some of the work that I do here at Stanford with students. One class in particular called Design Your Spiritual Life. But at the end of all the sessions, one girl in particular had asked, like, she had a question specifically for me, and she said, "You work with so many different religious traditions," and this is within my Hare Krishna community, and these are all youth, maybe within late teens to early mid 20s. And she said, "You work with all of these paths, all these people in these different traditions. How do you know that this is the best tradition for you? How do you know that this is your tradition?" And well, I answered it, and I didn't, and it didn't satisfy me for weeks since then. I've been thinking about that question, and even though I think I've asked that question, like, why is this path for me? Why have I chosen this path? I've asked it multiple times in my life, and had a very clear response to that. I mean, I had it when I first became a devotee in my teens, and I moved into the temple. And then in my 20s, I had to review it again because I'd taken vows, but I'd also kind of broken them. I stepped away from them because, I went back to college and I wanted to live my life as I thought. I still had my faith, but I wondered, is this the path for me? But then I realized, I thought about it in the practices that have had the most impact in my life. And the ones that were the most impactful were the ones of this tradition, which is, of course, like chanting, meditation. And so I reinvested again into that tradition, into my tradition. So, but when she asked me this question, and again, I mean, it happened again, I constantly, which will be part of the point of this discussion. When she asked me, I felt that I didn't articulate it so well, and I've been thinking about it ever since. And some of it is some of the work that we do at here at Stanford. I mean, this is just our memorial church, a picture of our somewhat cathedral. This is Stanford Memorial Church, which was built in 1896. A beautiful cathedral. But this is some of the work that we do. I've introduced myself in the work that we do at the Office of Religious and Spiritual Life, where I am right now. This is my very happy and blessed to have an office space here. But what we do here mainly is exactly what, I mean, in some ways, exactly for people that are asking questions, like the students in our youth retreat. I thought I should have answered and said with her, I should have said to her, like, well, that's exactly what we do here. One of the main things here is we do support and we nurture spiritual life here on campus. And we have like mental health support, we have medicine, we have doctors and things like that. But the university wants to make sure that there's specifically a spiritually nurturing environment or spiritual care here on campus. And basically, we one thing we do know is that if you do have faith, we want to make sure that you have the freedom or the space and the support, or to whatever capacity we can provide it, to give someone the ability to practice their faith. And then the secondary thing, which is more of like the principle of what we do, is to make sure that basically, I'm not just going to read from this, is kind of how I describe it, is that we protect this garden, this space where there's soil that is like nurturing for people to grow, to explore their faith, whatever tradition it is. And it also means sometimes a lot of people come to me. I'm a Hindu. I say, I'm the Hindu chaplain, and they come here. They may be Catholic or Muslim, and they come because they want to speak to someone outside of their tradition because they have questions that they feel they can't ask within the tradition, or they've asked, and it hasn't really they haven't come to find the answers they were looking for. It doesn't mean that I'm providing answers like oftentimes, not just sometimes. It's not like questions about karma or reincarnation. A lot of times it has to do with gender identity, or being in love with someone out of their religious tradition, or sometimes maybe not following exactly the tradition. Sometimes, like, there's someone who maybe would eat food that isn't halal, or someone who's eaten not kosher but vegetarian, or maybe sometimes Hindus visit me and they eat meat and they want to know what does that mean, and how they can move forward. Can they still have their faith? Does it mean they're not a Hindu? Does it mean they're not Jewish? Does it mean they're not Muslim? Of course, we say, no, it doesn't mean that. But what you are experiencing is that you've kind of grown up in a world, developmentally and environmentally, where it's somewhat of a bubble, where you've kind of had certain values that were presupposed. And for the first time, a lot of students have come here and they're exposed to many different beliefs, many different traditions, many different cultures. And so it becomes somewhat unsettling or uncertain, not in a negative way. They meet many great friends, and that's partially why it's hard for them. So this is what we do. We know that the process is natural. Uncertainty, when someone asks, how do you know this is the tradition? I know that they were asking me that because they had the question themselves, that they were asking me, how do you know this tradition is yours? But I kind of interpreted that the person was saying, like, I'm not sure if it is for me. I grew up in this tradition, but I'm not sure if I agree with it. And what does that mean? So it's that's a tough thing to answer. I'll tell you that I joked. She said, how do you know this is the best? This is the best for you. And I said, well, because we are the best. And that's such a stupid joke. it was just like a cheap little laugh. And I said, and people laughed, but I actually, if I could be frank, like, I do think that Krishna is wonderful. I do think Krishna in my heart is the best. I think the tradition laid out by Rupa Goswami is the most profound philosophical tradition I've ever read. But I've actually been quite, frankly, at times disappointed by the institution at times. And so I can't always just frankly say, this is the best, because I look at Christianity and say, oh, look what corruption they had. Or I look at, even Buddhism or Islam and see that they've had problems, and I can't say that we haven't had the same. And so I could never just like frankly say we are the best, even though I joked. Maybe I was just uncomfortable, but I made that statement. So I guess one thing I did want to say to them is that you're in a good place, that if you do feel doubt and you have questions, don't feel bad about that, because that's part of the process. Because part of the process of faith is being able to determine your agency, your ability to choose, your free will to choose a tradition, your own tradition. And even if it's your own tradition and you grew up with it and you just assume that it is your tradition, at some point you have to just choose. You may think you may just be floating through with it, but you have to willingly choose that tradition. And when you're young, with like a lot of the students who are here, they find themselves in that environment where they have to choose, because they could be hanging out with friends and other people are doing different things. They may find themselves in a relationship with someone who comes from a family with different values. So they have to kind of choose what are the standards of like their household, or what are the standards of their relationship. Can I go out and, go out to dinner with a friend who drinks alcohol? Can I go out with a friend who eats meat? Can I be in a relationship with someone who doesn't eat kosher or halal? And what does that mean for me? So these are the things that create the foundations of our faith. Is that okay? Does that seem, yeah, anyway, that's where I started here. So this is a text from the Sankhya Karika, Dukatraya. I'm sorry, it's Sanskrit. Maybe just read the English. It's the first verse of the text, and it says that the torment that's caused by suffering, that's actually the beginning of the inquiry into what is causing suffering. It's the beginning of the spiritual path, essentially. Karika is a very they're like sutras. They're very short verses, and you're supposed to reflect on them. And there's many commentaries on the text. I think this Samkhya Karika was written by Ishwar Krishna, not Kapil. But it's the point of the first verse of Samkhya Karika is that this kind of suffering. And when I remember my professor first defined dukkha, when I first studied the term dukkha, which means suffering, I always thought, especially in my late teens when I was like first encountering Sanskrit, I thought dukkha was just like, people on fire, or like being crushed by rocks, or just like horrible, like diseases, like flesh-eating diseases. But he said, actually, dukkha could just be an inconvenience. It's an unsettling. It could be as simple as something as like uncertainty. How unsettling is uncertainty? Like when we think about our future, it causes dukkha. It causes our heart to be anxious. That could be considered dukkha. So when we start inquiring about what it is that causes this kind of suffering, whether it's mild or acute or severe, that is dukkha. That begins the process of inquiry. Okay. So what I am going to jump into here is the idea of identity development. And so I'm also trying to be careful that, and maybe I don't have the answer. I still will continue to ponder this question that was asked to me, but I've been thinking about it for the past 3 weeks. So these are the things that I've been considering. And identity development is something that not only we discuss or we work with here, as I told you, the students who come through my office, but it's something that we teach. And identity development is not, it is an academic, like psychology field. And so there have been some, acharyas, as they may say, of the ideas of identity development. There's Jean Piaget, who first discussed the idea of like sensory motor pre-operational, like formal operation. This is kind of the first kind of developmental, even as like a child or infant, how we start to develop our ways of understanding the world. This was a very somewhat basic way. But then after him, I mean, all of these people who I'll go through, there's a lot to discuss, but I'm just going to brush through them. Unfortunately, it's not doing justice to them, but it'll be brief also. And these two are kind of core individuals, Erik Erikson, who had talked about these kind of these kind of dueling stages where we choose things: trust versus mistrust, autonomy versus shame, integrity versus despair. These were kind of these dualities that he positioned, that as we grow through, as we get older, we choose one or the other, and that determines the type of development that we have. Not saying one is negative. Well, it does seem like it's in a binary. The other two that I think the next two are the two that we studied and kind of presented for a class in particular here were Lawrence Kohlberg and Carol Gilligan. And Kohlberg had this idea that his idea is a type of moral development. So his is usually associated as how we develop our moral, our morals and our values. And so for him, it was like this similar as to Erikson. There's kind of juxtaposition between two things, like obedience and punishment, interpersonal independence and conformity. But these are what kind of determined our values. It's interesting. I mean, I won't go into it. There's a period of social contract where we start saying, like, okay, I have to be part of society and things like that. It's worth going into, but for the point of and the time that we have, I just wanted to say that these are certain, and there's also like stages of faith, a faith development that was done by Fowler, and of course Abraham Maslow is another like hierarchy of needs kind of development theory. And then the last person I want to mention is Lawrence Kohlberg's student, Carol Gilligan. And she had kind of observed, she studied under him, but she thought that something was missing. Of course, one of the major things is that during all of his studies, all of the examples were boys and men. So she developed more of a feminist aspect of that. But her development theory was based on relationships. And so that is a very essential, I think, a very groundbreaking kind of perception of how we develop. That development has to do with how we connect and make relationships with others, which is more, I mean, I think, at least for me, a little bit more connected to the idea of bhakti. And bhakti is essentially love is relationships. Not to say that Carol Gilligan is a bhakti or bhaktin, but the idea that our development is based on our abilities to make relationships with others in these different stages, being young, older, becoming a person who takes care of others. That's how she kind of saw the development of our identity. So one thing I've been looking at is also, and this may be new for others, but this is something that I learned when I lived in the temple, is that we also, in our bhakti tradition, have stages. We have a development theory also, which is it's a 9-stage process, which starts with Shraddha, which is defined as faith. And this is what they consider the beginning stage. This is through Rupa Goswami. That it starts with Shraddha, 16th century saint. The first prospect is Shraddha. The first stage is Shraddha, and it's characterized by desire for self-realization and a growing faith in the devotional process. Following that is Sadhu Sangha, and that's where you start to connect with others who have similar nurturing of faith. You want to desire to connect with spiritually advanced people and to grow in this process of devotion. Then there's bhajana kriya. And this is where kriya means to do, and bhajana means to pray, but to do practices of devotion. So that means to kind of officially inaugurate yourself into the process. And then it starts from this stage, it starts talking about internal characteristics, phases, anartha nivritti, which means the decreasing of unwanted attachment. So as a devotional practice, as you continue to bhajana kriya, your practices, certain things change. You start start desiring things that are unhealthy to you. You desire more spiritual things. So that's called anartha nivritti, the cessation of the anarthas, the unwanted things. That's the translation. Nishtha means to be fixed. So it means steadiness. So with these things that could be distractions, a kind of steadiness, a fixedness begins. And a person becomes even more firm in their practice. It becomes the center of, starts becoming the center of many things in life, how they see the world. And that doesn't mean like you're just in the woods or the Himalayas by yourself and under a tree. It means, it actually oftentimes means being part of community. It means being part of a community of other people who are focused on spiritual things. Ruchi just means a taste. This is something that also develops. You genuinely, after you've had this period of practice, when you practice something, sometimes it's agonizing, but after a while, it becomes this taste. It becomes something that you love. You taste, you begin to develop a taste for it. It's not just pain and agony. It's not just the discipline. It's the taste. It's something you enjoy to do. So now it's not just it's not just a practice to do over and over again. Now it's starting to open up into different areas. You now have the taste. Asakti means now you've become attached because you have a good taste. You have a good feeling and a connection to things that are spiritual. Now it seems that the things that have moved from attachment to the material have moved to spiritual things that are related to the spirit and spiritual life. Bhava, and it means bhava in Sanskrit could mean many things. It could just mean is, but bhava in this case, as Rupa Goswami, is love. It means the natural state. The natural state of a person is to love. And so it's the preliminary stage of a higher sense of love, the highest sense of love, which is pure love, which is prema. And so this is the 9 stages of bhakti. So in many ways, like when going back to the question of, a young person who was raised in the community, they could have sadhu sangha and they could have bhajana kriya. They could have been raised having in a community, and they could have had the practice. I know my brother-in-law, they have wonderful kids. They're very cute, but they love to get them at 5 years old, have like a nice kurta and like have them with a japamala in their hand and take a picture. So they could have the things that are the instruments of practice, and they could have the sangha and the community. But sometimes maybe the shraddha hasn't developed yet. And sometimes somebody has to go back and redevelop that aspect, that foundation of shraddha. We'll go back to this also. So is that okay for everybody? I know, Graham, it looks like you're maybe taking notes or okay, I'll move on.
And just interesting following this, and of course you've got the romanization of the Sanskrit.
Yeah, I didn't I not intentionally. I don't have the diacritics. I think I may have gone more towards the design level side, and I have not put the diacritics. But yes, that is the romanization of the Sanskrit. Those are the terms. Okay. So this idea of development in bhakti. Now what do I have here? Okay, so I'll go into this idea. So this will connect to the question that was asked, and I'm still thinking about it. So if you have any insight on it, please share, like what determines this is your spiritual path. So Design Your Spiritual Life is a program that we have here, that we teach here at Stanford. It's a collaboration with our office, the Office of Religious Life, and the Design School. And the Design School is pretty well renowned center at the engineering school. But the design process was something that was like really, I would say, like very hot. Maybe I think 10 years ago was like the hottest thing. It changed a lot about how things, people were looking at the industry here in Silicon Valley, about how people were presenting their products and how they were developing their products. So they needed to, they started really focusing on this idea of design. And the design process is a 5-step process. Oh, sorry, this is Designing Your Life. This is a book that was written by what the professors who we teach with, Bill Burnett. And we worked with Bill to develop the Design Your Spiritual Life. And now there's going to be a design, well, we have a Design Your Muslim Life, and there's going to be Design Your Christian Life. There's going to be Design Your Hindu Life. And I also think we could have a design specifically Hindu, but you could design your devotional life. And the key principles of the design method are these. So this is the design method. Sorry, did you need a little time with that, Graham? Sorry, I don't know if you needed that. So the design method, and okay, I'll explain this, all going back to the question also. The first process of the design method is to empathize, which is strange. I mean, we don't actually, when I heard that the engineering department had a process that starts with empathy, I was like, what? They're usually bottom line people. I was like, empathize is number one. But empathize because they said, well, if you're going to be making a product for somebody, you really have to know what they want. And so they said, he gives the example when they approached Alfred Ford, they asked him to make a better horse. The fact that he came out with an automobile from what was a request, a car with 4 wheels, from a request for a better horse, is the idea that you're going to empathize. Like, what do you mean you want a better horse? A horse that does what? What do you need? And so they need something that gets them from one place to another faster, or they need something that can carry a lot of things and make their lives easier, and basically do better than what a horse had been up to that date doing. And so essentially what came out of that was something that wasn't the horse. It was better. Well, so yeah, arguably. So empathize is the first process of the design method. You have to understand the needs and the context. The second thing is to define what is the need. Clearly articulate the problem. This is based on the empathy aspect. And then the fun thing is to ideate. Then you could, this is like when we have these labs, everybody just takes Post-its and they write 1,000 silly ideas and post them on the wall. Like a better horse could be like, I don't know, like a Star Wars AT-AT or something. I don't know, like who knows what they're, it could be, I don't know, it could have been legs, it could have been something with like stalks, it could have been, who knows, it's just anything. It could be a balloon, it could have been something that eventually became like the steam engine train or something like that. So ideate means define what's needed and then ideate. And then you prototype. So you select a few of these ideas and you actually commit to it. This is what would be bhajana kriya. The kriya means to do. So you're going to do it. So you're going to see it and see if it works. Take an idea and try to make it tangible. Try to make it happen. And then you test it. Well, prototype, prototype and test. You create the prototype and then you test it. Okay. So, sorry. So those are the 5 processes of the design method. So we took this idea and we created a course called Design Your Spiritual Life. And what we did was we created a curriculum with about 7 to 10 concepts that we think are the essential aspects of someone's spiritual makeup, their identity. We're talking about identity development. These are the things that a person might kind of inquire about as they develop what their beliefs are. The first thing is the worldview. How do you see the world in your relation to it? Then, now that you see how the world operates, what's beyond that? What are the things that you can't answer? What are the things that Like you understand how the world operates, but you don't understand why you have to go to sleep at night, or you don't understand what happens after death. You don't understand where consciousness comes from. These are these big questions we have. What is beyond our planet? What is holding the universe together? We generally will speculate about what that is, but we also in our religious traditions we have shabda, we have authority. We believe that we see these texts as sacred, coming from transcendence. So you could get your big picture from there as well. And then we ask students to say, what is ritual? And ritual isn't just like an activity. A ritual is what binds, what connects your worldview to the big picture. You may see how the world operates, but the ritual, the things that we do, whether it's praying or it's lighting candles, these are things that are supposed to connect what our sensory world is to the idea that's beyond it. So we ask them to create a ritual, or define what their ritual is. And then community. So now that you have a worldview, big picture, and ritual, and there's people that share these ideas, how do you form communities around that? What does that mean? And does it mean one community versus another community? What does it mean to you? These are also just essential aspects of anyone's spiritual religious life. And then coherence, the lesson was, how do all of these things fit together? How do they cohere? How do they cohesively join together? And it becomes, they all on different levels become more complicated. Because you have a worldview and you believe something, and you have a picture, a big picture, which could adjust your worldview, and you could have a ritual, try to connect it. When you get to community, it's like, then you have all different viewpoints, and how do you balance them all together? So coherence involves all of that. And how does that all fit together into this one picture? And that was a really good lesson. But I think probably one of the bigger lessons was the following lessons called crashes. What happens when coherence doesn't work anymore? What happens when the worldview isn't working anymore? What happens when you pray and you don't get what you want? What happens when your community starts thinking differently from you? What happens when you start thinking differently from your community? It's a crash. All of the things that you built, they come apart. What do you do? And discernment is, what do you do? What do you do when all of that loosens up and you don't know what to do? So that's 7 pieces. I mean, we had 10 weeks and we had a retreat in the middle of it all. And then we had at the end, we have something called an Odyssey, where people kind of lay out their practice for the next 30 years as a prototype. So this was our class, Design Your Spiritual Life. Now, I guess let's see, we have 48. I don't know. I think this is the activity that we had asked the students to do. What is take 5 minutes and write in the journals we provided. What is your worldview and what is beyond? Take a moment to reflect on your worldview. What's important in your life? Where are the long and short-term goals in your life? How does your day-to-day function? How does your day-to-day function? Oh man, I spelled that wrong. Anyway, and is it in line with your goals? How do you see your devotional spiritual life in the big picture? And what is the practice that connects you to the worldview of the big picture? I think I think in many ways that was unfair to put the big picture and the worldview. I think just asking about the worldview, what are the things that are important? How do you see yourself in relation to the world? Probably would have been a better activity. Just to go basic with that. Let me see here. Yeah, so that was the course. That is the course. That is also what we presented at the youth retreat. So, Amoda we have about 10 minutes. Is that right?
Yes.
Okay. I guess maybe we might come back to that. I'll just go through a few more things, if anybody, unless you would like to, just take a moment to think about your own worldview, where you are now, and what is important to you in your life. How does your day-to-day play out? And if you'd like to, we could share with each other what that is. Part of me feels like that's a really important thing. It has to do with community, where we kind of sit and share with each other what is important in my life. And I can tell you right now here in the office, it's rare that we sit down and say, even though we work here, 8 to 9 hours a day, we don't know what our day to day really is. Would you like to do that? Why don't we take like 3 minutes and just maybe put a little sketch about let's not do the big picture. Let's just think about what is the worldview, what's important in your life, and what are the long and short-term goals in your life. Would you like to, is that okay? Let's do that. So it's 6:51. We'll do that till 6:54. Okay. You could just finish writing your last thoughts and then just share. I mean, we could share, or if you don't feel like sharing, I'm happy also just to share my own reflections on that. Well, I'd say maybe I'll start it. If anybody wants to, feel free to join. My worldview is that I do think that relationships are the most important and impactful things in our lives as humans. And honestly, I think I'm horrible at it. And I want to be better at it. And so my short-term goal is to be better with my relationships, with my family, with my friends, my marriage. Uh, Even if it's good, I want to make it better. And in the long term, it continues with friends and family, but also I want to develop a relationship with my idea of the big picture, whether as God, ideally. The idea that I think there's a relationship with God is a very big thing in the long-term prospect for me. So I don't know if anybody would like to share or not, we could.
I can share.
Yeah.
What is important? Oh, sorry. Yeah, what is important in your life, in the worldview? I started with my sanity is important. And the way I make sure my sanity is preserved is by developing a life where I can be happy and spiritually nourished without getting sucked into the mess that this world can be. And from that, the short-term goals that come out of it. The one that's top of mind right now for me is that my goal is to professionally establish a life that allows me to focus on what is important later, allows me to focus on what is important later on to a greater degree. It's kind of like an investment now in the sense that in the future it allows me to invest my time into other things. And that brings me to the long-term goal, which is invest heavily in my spiritual sadhana or practice and progress through the stages of bhakti, like you actually yourself covered and talked about in your presentation. And what is a practice that connects your worldview to the big picture? To some degree, to some extent, I think this community and running it and finding people who want to be a part of it is something that connects me. I think it's a little funny because I would say in the big picture, I'm actually quite small. And Devamrita Swami in his book, Hiding in Unnatural Happiness, has a nice little excerpt on how the human race is the smallest biomass in like out of all the species. But if we were to be removed, it would make the biggest impact. So I think in that way, it's possible to be small but make an impact. So my goal is to make be a small part of that impact.
Yeah, gee, that was great. Actually, I really appreciated that reflection on the work and the service you do for putting these groups together. Is that, yeah? If anybody wants to share, otherwise I'll just conclude as we have a few minutes left. Okay. So, getting back
You'll
here.
see my text.
Yeah. Yes. What was that?
You should see my text.
Oh, let me see. Let's see. Oh, yes.
I think it reflects our moment, just what's going on, particularly in this country.
Yeah, it is. Thank you for putting that, Graham. It is, yeah, disconcerting. I've grown up here my whole life. Yeah, I've never felt as concerned as I do now, and I wonder if I don't know if my parents felt this concern, but I have a feeling they did, and I know that my grandparents probably during World War II also felt something quite similar. But it does I feel a buildup that's frightening. So thank you for putting that. Okay. Let me see. Is my screen still share? I should share my screen here. Still? Is it good? Yeah?
Yeah, we can see your screen.
Okay. So I had done this before, Shraddha Sadhusanga Bhajan. So this is development in bhakti. And then there is the processes. And so these are the different processes of devotional service or bhakti seva. Shravanam just means to hear. It's something very similar to the idea of presence that we learned in chaplaincy. Just listening to the glories or the stories of God. Kirtanam is the other side, to chant, to sing, to praise, glorify, sing the Lord's praises. So these are all, this process itself is from a text called the Bhagavat Purana, or the Srimad Bhagavatam. So this is in a shloka, or a verse in Sanskrit. So that's where this comes from. So the first two are to just hear, and then to chant, and then to remember, smaranam, constantly remember the Lord's name and the pastimes of stories. And Padasevanam means to serve, to humbly serve God. Of course, literally it says Padasevanam means to serve. To serve the feet means to be a gesture of humility, that you bow to someone. Archanam means the process, the act of worshiping. That sometimes that could be the ritual, as we discussed earlier, the thing that connects the worldview to the transcendent. And Vandanam means to offer prayers. Dasyam means to serve again, but simply to serve with the attitude of a servant. Sakyam means to be a friend, also the friend with God. And then Atmanavedanam means to surrender, just to surrender everything. That's a very high level to ask for, but these are all the different processes and they kind of interact in different ways. And this goes back to this idea of the design method, where you have processes and stages and understand that you're going to go through prototype and test over and over again. And so even when I go back all the way to the question where I am now with it, how do you know this is the tradition for you? How do you know this is your spiritual path? The truth of the matter is, like, I go through this prototype test over and over again. And I don't think, some could say, like, you have one foot in the boat and one foot out. But I think as you kind of go into the tradition, it's almost infinite, that you go deeper and deeper into the tradition. So you could go from Shraddha to Nishta and back to Bhajana Kriya, going to these stages, the stages of bhakti. It's not just this one linear model. You will go back and forth. I think the idea theologically is that by prema, by ruchi, that you're kind of set and prema. But as far as nishta, anartha nivritti, sadhu sangha, we go back and forth. It's a process. It's a design method. We prototype, we test, we try better. We try to make a better model. So if there's something about your spiritual life, I would say, like, if Shraddha isn't clear, that's okay. That's part of the process. But it means that you might have to kind of experiment and prototype, like, what is the thing that you need to determine what helps nurture that faith. You may have to work with what is your practice. You may need to work with what is your community and try to prototype. Maybe you need a more specific community, a community that has specific interests. So I guess that's where I am with this. I don't have the answer, right? I'm still working on it, but I know that there's a process. Sorry, I have all these. Did I have a? Oh, I repeated some. Sorry, I used. But there. Thank you. So I think that the answer to that I have now is that this is a process, that you will kind of stumble and you will be unsure of your faith. And that's just something that has to be inquired about. And it's okay to inquire about that. And I said at the time that some things that kind of were helpful for me was gratitude to my teachers and things like that. And then my wife was like, "Oh, what did you say?" You just said, you kind of made a default, and you just said you were thankful to the guru, and like everybody's going to say things like that. And I was like, "Oh, I'm sorry," but that's not. It's true. I mean, I am grateful to my teachers, but it helps me to know that the method isn't just this like linear thing, and that God, the idea of spiritual life, or if you believe in the concept of God, isn't just like a condemning person that says, like, "Oh, you fell down and you messed up." It's good to see it as a process, and you have good intentions to keep on trying until you find the things that work, and realizing, also being okay with the idea that it's going to work, but it might not always work, and it'll change, and that you have at least the insight to kind of adjust to that, also to pivot, to see it, to try to find another way if that way no longer works. And eventually, I think you come to a place where you're not like just one foot in, one foot out. It starts becoming one foot in, one foot in, just like a little deeper, 1 foot in, 1 foot more in. You know, that's how the process goes. Like you see those like charts that are like, it's going down, but it's still higher than where it was before. I think that's what spiritual life is like. And it's somewhat of an experiment or design method. Yeah. Any thoughts on that? If you have any insights on why this is your spiritual path, please share with me, because maybe you have, I know ING, you have usually your Devamrita Swami has some really nice insights about things like this. And I don't know if you have any thoughts on that.
I'm saying this out of pure selfishness. I wish you were up in our area.
I kind of am. I'm on the West Coast. Am I? Are we in the West Coast? I'm from New Jersey, so it's pretty good, I think.
Maybe you can join me for a flight down to the Bay. I go a few times a year, Graham.
Good thought.
Okay.
Yeah, I was just gonna add, sorry, I was waiting for anyone else to talk for the awkward silence, but I liked your point about 1 foot in, 1 foot out, because I feel like growing up for the longest time, I felt like that's what my life was. And then making that transition to almost picking a side required some effort. But when I did do that, then trying to be in that side became easier because I was no longer going through this, mental battle between, do I really want this or do I not? And when it comes to picking your spiritual path, I liked the way you led us in with like association and then practice, and then even going from a state of like practice back to maybe lacking faith, kind of that inner battle. So I feel like those stages depicted how I was feeling sometimes, and where we have to go was also helpful to see. um I guess for me personally, the way I know it's a good spiritual path, or this is my path, is kind of similar to expressing gratitude, but looking at the previous teachers who have followed that path and where they are at now. And then that gives me a lot of inspiration, being like, this is where I want to go. So even though I don't have a lot of faith in it, or I lack consistency or whatever it is, for me, it helps to have mentors and leaders who have stuck to the path. And just watching them walk it, it's like, wow, you're really good at it. And maybe I can also be there. So that's something that helps me, that I wanted to share.
Thank you, Manya. Yeah, that is encouraging. Yeah, definitely seeing people who are on the path, and then they share with you like, well, it's not always easy, but
Yeah.
it's nice. It's here. Like you just see them surrounded by community, and it's such a beautiful thing.
Yes. Yeah. Right. I know we're hitting a few more minutes past 7, but does anybody have any last comments before we wrap up?
You'll see my text.
In the chat, yes. How do
I
you
love
pronounce that word?
Ecumenical. That's what we call the church at Stanford. They call it ecumenical. They're like, we're an ecumenical church. And I'm like, yeah, but you're ecumenical Christian church. It's like, it's ecumenical, but like for Christians. It's not like truly like universally ecumenical, because
Yeah.
That's why I put it in quotes.
it is I also appreciate the ecumenical approach. It's very nourishing, I have to say, as a chaplain. It's great to see other people. Just earlier today, I was speaking with our Muslim chaplain, just kind of sharing our woes about the world and our institutions, and hoping that we could make a difference and make them better. And I know that we can. We definitely can.
Yes.
This is
I
so
think-
great. You know, it would, like Graham was saying, it'd be so nice if Seattle's ever on your way anywhere, we'd love to have you for an in-person session or even like a half-day retreat or a full-day retreat. Like there's just so much wisdom that you're able to unpack so nicely in such a logical, succinct manner, which I think as a chaplain, it fits your role, of course. But in today's day and age, I think it's something that's somewhat of a rarity when it comes to just spirituality or even religious understandings. So at least I'm very appreciative uh, of the time and the way you're able to share. And I know everybody else here as well very much appreciates the way you dive into these complicated topics.
Thank you. Oh, I appreciate these discussions. I wish I knew more. I wish I could, speak like Vaisheshika Prabhu or Devamrita Swami. They're brilliant. I just love hearing from them. And I guess that's why, as Manya, you were saying, it just, you have to find these rare people and just hear from them. So humble and sweet and just like well balanced. Their
Yeah.
faith, their role in the world, their dedication to the community, to the youth. Really, it's admirable. So admirable. Oh, it's hard. It's hard. I'm just saying that because like it's it's hard to find the time, and
Yeah.
they dedicate all of their time for it.
For sure. Great. Thank you so much, everyone, for sharing. And just echoing what Anne said, thank you, Kula, for being here. This was such a nourishing and introspective session. I really love the activity of long-term and short-term goals and kind of reflecting on what is important to us. So thank you for bringing so much wisdom, and we can't wait to have you here soon in our group. And if you all are in town, anyone who's joining us from Seattle, we do have a Soul Fest coming this Saturday at the Bhakti Studio. So please join us for that. It'll be super fun, and we have amazing food. But other than that, we'll see everyone on Wisdom Wednesdays next week. Bye, everyone. Thank you for a great
you.
evening.